Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, 7 after 8 o'clock. News and views on Salam Media. Please do become a part of the conversation. Lots to talk about. I guess the key question to ask is: are we hopeful as South Africans? Because leading up to the elective conference, the 55th ANC elective conference, we had lots of comment from different people suggesting that better the devil you know in Cyril Ramaphosa than the devil you don't know. Let's hear what Dr. Clyde Ramalane has to say. A very good morning to you. Welcome to the program, and a pleasure once again to have you on the show.
Good morning, Julian. Good morning to the Salam Media audience all over. Thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be on your show this morning.
Okay, you're not only a doctor, but you are a bishop as well. You are a political analyst. You have a PhD in politics from UJ, and of course, you have a degree in theology. So, what a pleasure to talk with you. And of course, because of your degree in theology, you are also referred to as bishop. That is your title. So, should we say Dr. Bishop Clyde Ramalane?
I'm easy. I can just be called Clyde also. No problem.
Okay, Clyde. So here we are, the build up to the 55th National Conference, ANC conference. We now have not a top six, we now have a top seven. And I asked the question: is that necessary? Is this just another issue around cadre deployment? I don't know. You will unpack that for us. And regarding the re-election of Cyril Ramaphosa, regarding the issue that's been doing the rounds in media and all social media platforms, suggesting better the devil you know in Cyril Ramaphosa. And as far as the ANC is concerned, their take on the issue is Cyril has been mandated to do a job, to fix the broken ANC, to clean out the rot, and to truly get the ball in motion, so to speak. I'm not sure I agree with that viewpoint, but let's hear how you read the picture, the actual, obviously, the conference, the results of the conference, and the way forward.
Thank you, Julie. Let me first start off by saying congratulations to the CR22 campaign for having secured a second term for the incumbent. I'm doing so because it's only the right thing to do if we accept that politics within the party, within a party like the ANC, eventually has an elective conference, and that elective conference do produce eventually a leadership. So it's important to start off there. Now, concerning whether this is the best that the ANC could produce, concerning whether this leadership would necessarily lead for renewal in terms of its organization and in terms of South Africa as a nation in regard to economic development, prosperity for all of us, and a forward moving, that's debatable to a large extent. I think it's just to reflect a little bit on the actual outcomes. If you look at the outcome, of course, the top six is now the top seven by the adoption of a second deputy secretary general in this regard. So the SGO office, which has suffered quite a bit in the last, let's say, 18 months or more than 18 months since the departure of the then elected SG Ace Magashule, and became, in a sense, the playing ground of the TG and a mixed group of people, which includes Gwen Ramakgopa later on, is now beefed up with more warm bodies into it. And so now you have more people that would be able to do so. We're not particularly clear at this point in time how you're going to divide the tasks. However, we do know that there's administrative issues, and there is, for example, policy issues, and there's government interactions. And most probably the idea behind the second deputy and the first deputy to support, of course, the SG, who is now Fikile Mbalula, is to ensure that you cover all bases. We can debate that as well. On the just in an overview, it is a given that the top six reflects to a large extent to the benefit of Gauteng province. Gauteng province is very prominent within the top six, my counting of the top 7, my counting is that at least 6 members come from Gauteng. I know some would protest and say, no, Mbalula is from Free State. Well, I was born in Woodstock, Cape Town. I'm not from Cape Town. I live in Johannesburg for over 30 years, over 40, almost, somewhat years. So therefore, to make the argument that Mbalula is from the Free State is not a valid argument. To make the argument that Gwede Mantashe is from Kala, somewhere in the Eastern Cape, it's true to the extent that he was born there, but his politics takes place here. So Gauteng is the big winner. But to understand that winning, you have to appreciate the role of Paul Mashatile in this whole thing. Paul Mashatile has always defined his politics tactically as that of being a kingmaker. You would recall how he, in another season, tried to get Motlanthe there, went to negotiate to get Motlanthe as king. This time, Paul Mashatile made himself king. And I'm saying that to say, if you understand the dynamics of how he is placed, should anything happen to Cyril Ramaphosa, which is quite and very possible going to the future, looking in the future, should anything happen to Ramaphosa, you will then have a deputy president who will then take over, and that is very likely, given the ANC's history in regards to Mbeki being recalled, in regards to Zuma being recalled, and in regards to the fact that the ANC is insisting it is their response, it is their task or their role or their privilege to recall its own. They would not want Parliament to recall him. That's why you had seen happened or transpired the way they transpired, no different to the Zuma case. But I would like to believe that it won't be too long into this new term when we are going to see some interesting shifts. And those who are banking that Cyril Ramaphosa would finish his term would find themselves with a new president. I think that is what I want to say.
I don't know. I don't know if I should be nervous about that or not. Do you think this is riding on the fact that Zuma is threatening to take Cyril Ramaphosa to court? Would it be about that or other issues behind the scenes? We also know that I think Zuma's body language and just his entrance, the dramatic entrance at the conference, spoke volumes, did it not? And with the disdain that he kind of interacted, with Cyril Ramaphosa, that does say a lot. One needs to read the body language and read between the lines. Let's get back to that statement of yours. Let's truly understand what is then going to play out. Let's hope and pray it doesn't. But what do you believe is going to play out? There's also the issue around, there's also an issue, and maybe I should leave it for the next interview where I'm going to be discussing the energy issue and Eskom. But the fact that, we have the issue of the car power ships, we have the issue of, renewable energy and all of that. Let me rather leave that for the next interview. Talk to us in detail about why you have made that comment. What is it that we should be reading into the comment you've made?
No, I think it's a given. It's a historical fact that 3 weeks ago, the current president wanted to resign. It reminded me of the case of Robert Mugabe. A lot of people think that Mugabe wanted to stay in power forever. Mugabe tried to resign in 2003. He tried to resign in 2013. In each instance, it was those around Mugabe that said to him, "What about us if you should go?" And so the issue is when Ramaphosa decided to resign 3 weeks ago on a Thursday, which we all was going to listen and hear him do so, he was persuaded by those around him who are necessarily benefiting from his presidency. Meaning, I'm not going to be the moral judge in terms of whether his motives were sincere or whether he finally understood that he was now caught as caged with regards to the report that no longer has bearing from a parliamentary point of view, but the investigations are continuing. The fact of the matter is, it is my reading that you have an incumbent currently who doesn't really want to be in office, but has to stay in office for the sake of those around him. It was the same people, Gwede Mantashe, the Gungubelas of this world, the Ronald Lamulas of this world, the Zamani Souls of this world, to some extent, that rallied around him, the Hanakoms of this world, and persuaded him to continue standing. Now, the question is, if somebody does not have a desire to stand, but you make him stand, how authentic is that person leading, or who is leading the country now? And I'm comfortable in assuming that as you look at the African National Congress, you can comfortably accept that it's not a question of Cyril Ramaphosa leading the ANC, for that matter. It's a question of him being led by dominant people. And one of those, with all due respect, has been his number one protector, Gwede Mantashe, who has also maintained his seat. Interesting enough, Gwede Mantashe was not on the slate originally with Cyril. It was going to be Stan Matabata, if you would recall, as the conversation and the discourse unfolded. However, what Gwede did, what Mantashe did, was to force himself into that position to the point where where the president is completely indebted to this man and can't survive without him at this point in time. And so I'm just saying that.
Mm-hmm. Clyde, isn't this how politics is played all around the world? I mean, you become the president, you lead the country, but you are not the guy that calls the shots. It's all your advisors, all your sidekicks, so to speak. They are the guys that make the policies, your funders, your campaign funders. These are the people that call all the shots. And perhaps this is the reason why we also can see that Cyril was very cautious. He's always portrayed himself as being this deep thinker and thinking things through very carefully before he makes a decision. But of course, it was perhaps, yes, to an extent, but he had to obviously interact with, with all of his supporters, those people propping him up immediately, in his deputy and everybody else. And on their say so, he would then make the necessary announcements, whether they were good or bad for the country. That's my first comment. The second comment is the issue around the private prosecution by Zuma. How heavily is it weighing down on Cyril? And that's aside from the Phala Phala scandal that he still has to answer for. Do you think these are part of the issues that's going to make him weigh in very heavily and then decide after a couple of months, I don't need this, I need to move on? Because thankfully, he is a billionaire in his own right. He doesn't need to be in the system to further corrupt and rape South Africa. He doesn't need our money. So he is in that very enviable position. So he can jump ship whenever he pleases.
Julie, let me start with the last point. I've heard this a million times about Cyril being a billionaire and therefore is not, after any power. That's all hogwash. And I'm saying that to say the following, that being a billionaire does not mean to say that you don't want more power. Being a billionaire doesn't mean anything but to say you have access to resources. We heard the same story that Cyril would not take money from us, according to Mr. Mantashe at the time, because he's a billionaire. We heard that he was the right candidate to fix the economy because he's a businessman. We heard all of that. You and I can make now an analysis after 5 years of having him, 5 years of him having served in the ANC and the years that he has served as leader of the country. Is the country financially better? Are we doing better economically? Do we have more jobs? What have we completed, or what have we done very well in terms of governance in this country? We haven't done so. Our SOEs is in a pathetic state. And whether you want to now jump around and people jump around and go back to the Guptas don't exist. If we have failed in the last 5 years of their absence, if not more, longer, then the buck must stop somewhere else. So all of these things must be left at the door of the current President Cyril Ramaphosa. We cannot continue to exonerate Ramaphosa as this angel of light that is hoping to be a messiah that will bring change, when we can see the evidence in front of us. The African National Congress went to this conference completely divided. It remains divided whether we like it or not. It is not just divided, but it is completely not renewing. What is it renewing? Let me give you a classic example. If the African National Congress is renewing in terms of from a moral point of view, its incumbent president currently is dealing with Glencore. Well, the Glencore diapers, what I call. He's dealing with Phala Phala. He's dealing with even the Bosasa issue in regard to the 500,000 that he received in the name of his son, however you define it, for his 2017 campaign. Those records are sealed. The current deputy president, Paul Mashatile, has been cited in the report of Zondo for having received an amount of over 385,000 from the same Bosasa that we now know is a corrupt entity. The current chairperson has been cited. He has been cited in that same report for having received benefits from Bosasa. So what the current DSG, Nombula Mokonyane, is in the same position. I guess what I'm trying to say to you, if you can tell me this is renewal of the ANC, then I'm asking you, what is renewal? So there's nothing being renewed in the ANC. What we have is we have a move to solidify a particular group of people to ensure that they continue benefiting from the position of power in running the African National Congress. Now, when I'm saying that, I'm not trying to say they ought to be perfect. I'm just showing you that there is nothing going to authentically change within the ANC. You're going to see what's going to happen even with regard to its NEC members as it comes up now. You're going to see a stronger mold towards having certain people out and certain people in, because that is just the nature of it. On your question of earlier, is it not something that happens all around the world? Of course, around the world, presidents are made. That's not the subject matter I'm raising. I'm saying when you, in your own conscience, decide, I'm going to step aside, I'm going to resign from this position because this burden is too much on my shoulders, or because I have a case to answer, whatever was in his mind at the time when he studied the report that was submitted by the retired Judge President Ngobo, for that matter. Whatever was in his mind to make him decide, I'm going to retire, he needed to be convinced. And it wasn't convincing him for him to stand. It was convincing him for the sake of those around him. It is a given fact. And that for me is the challenge. So when people sit today on the 20th of December and look forward, I hate to bust their bubble. There's nothing going to change. It's going to be the same old, same old. If we judge his presidency as having been lacking in many instances in the last 5 years, it's going to continue in that regard. And so as far as I can see it, there was no real contest for him also. Because on the one hand, you had Zweli Mkhize, who sits with his own Digital Vibes diapers at this point in time. So your point you made earlier, rather choose the better devil of the two. The fact of the matter is that, and if I use the word devil, I'm not saying they're devils, I'm just using it in a hypothetical sense. I'm using it as an example. So I'm saying better the devil that you know in this regard. That's what happened here. Perhaps my last point on the subject matter, to go back to the issue of when I said that the likes of Mantashe and them are leading the president. You have to understand that the president is in power, but there is an international / white interest group of people defined by business that needs him to be there as well. They are not necessarily on par always with, for example, the views of the Mantashes of this world. That's where the tension is going to come from. We saw this with regard to the energy issue when the president went off to sign deals with President Biden in regard to the green energy and green economy, in regards to what will happen to our future as it relates to coal. You saw Mantashe raising his voice on that matter and said, but what about the fact that we have 40 years of coal deposits still within South Africa? What about the fact that Europe is right now opening the new coal mines? Why are we going this way? That there is exactly the knife edge issue, because it boils down to economics. And so that particular group that supports the president from a business point of view do not share this view that Mantashe holds. So at some stage, the actual president of this country will speak.
Okay, two issues before we wrap up, very quick ones. What worries me about this discussion is the comment you made at the opening of the discussion, and that is the recalling
I can't hear you.
of past presidents. That worries me. Are you suggesting that there is a possibility that perhaps Zuma could be recalled? Or Thabo Mbeki, for that matter. These guys are old. They need to,
I wish I could hear
now
you. I can't
young
hear you.
blood. Can you not hear me? Clyde, can you hear me now? Clyde?
I can't hear you. I don't know. It's very intermittent. I can't hear you.
Okay, can we try again? The
Okay.
issue of the recalling of perhaps Zuma or Thabo Mbeki. These guys are very old. They're in their way past their retirement years. Is that what you were leading to, or did I misread what you had said there? That's the one question. And then the second question is, how worried should we be about this deep fracture within the ANC? On the one side, we have the RET faction. Do you think that if that we reach the point where Cyril Ramaphosa throws in the towel, that the RET is going to come into power, and what's that going to mean for us as a country in South Africa?
No, I would like to take a step back and just answer the one question that you raised in regards to the summons that was served by the former president on the current president. Well, I don't think at this point in time that is a material issue. This is my view. I do believe that if the president does not show up on the 19th of January, he will have to explain himself in this regard, because he is summoned, whether we like it or not. What the state attorney on behalf of the president presented is not necessarily exonerating the president from showing up on the 19th of January. So that's where I would like to park there. But I don't think that the impact of that would be major on Ramaphosa. That's my personal view. Now, in regards to the issue of age, I don't think it's an issue of age that is defining whether Ramaphosa would be stepping down or not. It is for me, it boils down to one simple issue. The president knows he has a case to answer on Phala-Phala. He's been delaying this through what I call obfuscation, by virtue of the fact that he controls all the current investigations. The NPA investigation, the Hawks investigation, the SARS one, the SARB one, and the Public Protector investigation, at least those 5, are within his control at this point in time. At some point in time, the NPA will have to make a statement. At some point in time, SARS or SARB will have to explain to us how on earth this occurred, at least from the perspective and the area that concerns them, that details the issues around Phala-Phala. So he's acutely aware of that, number one. He's also aware of that. If he wasn't aware of that, he would not have wanted to resign. He's aware of that. He's aware that he has damaged the trust factor that ordinary people, had in him concerning leading the country. The ordinary person still asks questions concerning, can we trust this person? Did this happen? What happened here? And to constantly tell people it was his own money, that's not an excuse that lasts, because even if it was his own money there, it does not change the fact that rules were broken, laws were violated, and that he was working, or rather moonlighting in this regard, while holding the office. That for me is the subject matter here. So I think the biggest aim, and I'm really guessing this, I think that the president wanted not to be the first president post-Mandela to be only given one term. He wanted a second term to get through the gate, but he will give it up, or he will be forced to give it up. That's where I'm coming from. In the same way that Zuma was willing to give up in the second term, he wanted to leave in May that year, 2018. And I can say that because he said that to me personally. He wanted to leave in May 2018. He wanted to introduce the new president to BRICS. And there was an agreement for him to last until then, which is still a year before the elections. But the CR17 group at the time forced that he be out so that the SONA can be delivered by the incumbent. In the same way, I'm saying to you that the current president will not serve 5 years. And when that moment happens, we're going to see an interesting dynamic unfolding of how his current team around him is either restructured or redefined. I do not think that the RET at this point in time has the wherewithal to come together and really stave off anything at this point in time, because it remains a fragmented group. I'm on record to have said, if they had the presence of mind to have selected one clean person and presented that as the face, the outcomes could have been different. But they were playing around for more than 2 years, all trying to be president. And it doesn't work like that. You need to go to conference with a clear mandate how you're going to handle things in this regard. And I know people would say to me, it's up to the branches to decide. Yes and no. Branches are being influenced, whether we like it or not. Money influences branches. Branches are being influenced by leaders on top of branches, and the list goes on. We have seen how leaders of different provinces are accused today of having betrayed the branches in terms of the votes. We've heard this. You can go into any platform and find that out. So I'm saying the fact of talking about the branches will decide is a noble idea, but branches are also not immutable. They can change. They are influenced. You can influence them with money and anything else. All I'm trying to say, Julie, is that 2023 will not necessarily bring for South Africa what we're hoping for. We're going to see the unfolding of the dynamics of the ANC with some ministers like Lindiwe Sisulu being released. We're going to see all of that stuff happening. And that's fine because it is right to do so. The question is South Africa better come January 2023? Will South Africa be better? Will we have access to proper electricity? Will we have? Maybe a last point I want to say here. Is it not interesting that Andre de Ruyter did not, even though he resigned, he said, I'm stepping back. Where do you ever in the world find a CEO saying I'm resigning, but he's saying it, he's calling it and defining it, he's stepping back? What does that mean? Is he coming back? We don't know.
Okay, gosh, I don't know if I should feel hopeful after the discussion with you, or does that suggest to me more gloom and doom for us as South Africans, or absolute chaos going into 2023? Interesting times indeed, and undoubtedly you and I are going to have many more chats regarding our government. Dr. Bishop Clyde Ramalane, political analyst, always a pleasure talking to you. Go well, and a very, very happy and safe festive to you, and a prosperous new year. God bless.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Salam Media. Same to you. God bless.
It is exactly 8:35, time for us to be joined by Zakhele Madela. He is a social and energy expert at a South African Energy Forum. Another very big issue to be unpacking with him this morning. Please stay with us, and we do hope you will become a part of the conversation. This is News Media.